Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're welcome to our preview show, and we're looking ahead to the quarterfinals of the Intermediate Championship coming up this weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm delighted to be joined by Clonmore footballer Rory Cunningham, and we're going to go through all four of the games coming up. As always, this podcast is brought to you in association with McKeever Teamwear, proud supplier of all Armagh GA merchandise. So, Rory, as usual on the podcast, we're going to go through the games just as they come. And it's starting on Friday night. It's in David Park, and it's going to be St. Paul's taking on Wolfe Tones in the first game of the weekend. And I suppose to start us off on this game, Wolfe Tones beat Tiernogue in the first round by a point 8-7, and St. Paul's beat yourselves by a point 10-9. So I think, is it fair to say that both teams would have been disappointed while they won the game, their first rounds, that have been disappointed in how they performed, and they'll probably hope for better this weekend?
Well, I suppose, in fairness, they're probably not as disappointed as Clonmore and Tiernogue. I can definitely testify for Clonmore. We are gutted, but that's football. What I would say disappointed is probably a strong word, but I'd say both teams know that there's room for improvement. St. Paul's against ourselves, whilst they've done enough to win, we felt we left a lot of chances behind, and St. Paul's forward line didn't really fire like it can. Now they were missing Ryan Lawless and Owen McConville only came on, but they didn't really fire like they have earlier in the year. They didn't put, when we in Clonmore, if we knew before the game we were going to hold St. Paul's to 10 points, we had really thought we had a good chance of winning it. So there's a lot for St. Paul's to improve on, and County Corner forward didn't have the same, what do you call him? Not Niall.
Andrew Mernon,
sorry. Just didn't have the same influence in the game that he can, you know what I mean, and didn't really get into it. So they'll be looking more from Andrew, more leadership. Where I was impressed with him, I thought Niall McCrory, really had a good game for them. And he dropped in full forward, back out to midfield, scored a couple of points. He can be an asset for them, So I think St. Paul's have a lot to work on, but they've a lot of potential there. If you play that full forward line with Andrew Mernon in there and Owen McConville and Anton McParland in the half forward line, they do have a good half forward line, a good forward line that can put up scores. And saying that, the Tones there, whilst Tones will be again, they'll be happy to have beat Tiernogue. Tiernogue obviously had a bit of momentum coming with promotion behind them. They'll have been happy to have won that. But the way the Tones played, they're not set up to score 2-14, you know what I mean? It's going to be tight, it's going to be low, and the Tones probably knew that. They'd like to have scored more than 8 points, of course, but, they're not going to concede big scores. So I do think this one will be tight. I think the key for the Tones is definitely they've moved really Jonathan McKeown to 6, Tubey, as he's more locally known, at 6. With him at 6, Ryan McQuillan at halfback and Jamie Haughey at halfback. That's really the big platform, and they have been playing well, and they dictated a lot of possession against Tiernogue. So for St. Paul's really need to get on top of that halfback line, and also probably need to get on top of the keeper. The keeper's been coming out and creating a lot of overlaps for the Tones, and they've been building a lot of possession, from deep. So that's the way they play. It suits them. Peter Nugent has probably slightly tweaked their system, but they've played a similar way this last number of years, and they're going to keep it tight. They're not overly attractive to watch sometimes, but it can be effective, and they win more games than they lose. So I think it's going to be tight. Probably for me, I would be just tipping St. Paul's for this one. I just feel they have enough. I just worry about how much Tones are going to score, and I think that if St. Paul's can get out in front, and I would mention that St. Paul's did not start well against ourselves. They were 3-0 down. I don't think they can afford to do that against the Tones. The way the Tones play, if you get behind, it's very hard to drop numbers behind the ball. It's very hard to break them down, and then they pick you off on the break. So St. Paul's will want to start better than they did last week.
And I think it's worth saying the Tones, they are difficult to break down. There's no doubt about that, right? But the Tiernogue team that played were minus probably their two best scoring forwards in Oisín Connady and Paul Chiarville. So the Tones are going to face a much stronger forward line coming up this weekend, and you've already mentioned the most of them. You know, Andrew Murnan, who we will sort of discuss separately, will drift in from midfield to full forward. Niall McCorry, as you say, can go into full forward. Anton McPartlin scored 2 points against yourselves. McCorry got 2 points. Ryan Lawless didn't play. He'll be back for this game, I'd imagine. And I've missed one as well. Oh, McConville only come on against yourselves. So they have 4 or 5 really, really top class forwards for this level that the Tones maybe haven't experienced before.
Yeah. Well, I know that they played in the league as well, and look, St. Paul's had a good record against them. But I feel that the Tones have a lot of experience in that half back line, and if they make this game a war, and they drag it into a low scoring game, I think the Tones could win it. But as you say, if St. Paul's can get out in front early and get their forwards into gear and move that ball quick before the Tones cover gets into shape, if St. Paul's kick 14, 15 points, they'll win this game. I don't think Tones will score that. Although I was impressed with this young lad, Niall Dummigan. I thought he showed some glimpses of quality at 11 for the Tones. If they can get more early ball to him, he has a bit of potential. He can take a man on, so it's not on to say that Tones can't win. I think they can, but I'm fancying St. Paul's.
And just on Andrew Murnan, where you were playing full back against St. Paul's, where do you feel Andrew Murnan's best position is? Because we were sort of discussing off air the St. Paul's and St. Peter's game during the league, and we were both at it. And I thought Andrew had a really big impact out around the middle of the field that night. I think the first 4 points for St. Paul's, if I remember correctly, he won 2 frees and he won 2 kickouts, and that was the 4 points that got St. Paul's up and running. But we've seen him at county level how effective he can be in the edge of score as well. So where do you think his best position is, particularly in this game and just in general for St. Paul's?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel that his roving role does create a lot of problems for teams because, especially at this level, teams want to tag him wherever he goes. We sort of rotated him and let him float out. If he went out to the midfield, we let Keelan Donaghy maybe pick him up. If he came in to full back, I just picked him up and let Brendy play in front, just to try and blot out that early ball into him, because if it's one-on-one, he's very, very strong in the air, he's exceptional leap. I feel that the rotational role definitely will cause Wolf Tones a lot of problems. It does cause teams a lot of difficulty, and I do feel that it's a good ploy that they use. As I said, Niall McCorry sort of interchanged with him, and he also was very effective at full forward. He can win marks, he moves well, he's good feet, so they have 2 good options in there. And in fairness, Dara Toll played full forward as well, and was effective, and made a lot of good runs early on in the game. He provides a good option. So Paul's do have a lot of options in there, and that rotational full forward role does cause difficulties for team, to pick up.
And I think I'm going to agree with you here, where I just think St. Paul's have too much firepower for Wolf Tones, and I just think they've probably more experience too in the last few years. They've been knocking on the door at intermediate level. They've been one of the top teams in intermediate for the last few years. So I think St. Paul's will get over the line there and make the semi-finals. So that's in David Park, 7:30 on Friday evening. Then a double header in the Athletic Grounds on Saturday. The first game is Shane O'Neill's against St. Peter's. This is at 4:00. And the next one, Blake and Tullysarn at 6:00. So the first one, Rory, Shane's and St. Peter's, probably 2 of the top teams in the Intermediate Championship. I think going by the league, they are the top 2 teams in the Intermediate. Shane's obviously won Division 2A, and I think it was St. Peter's that finished second. So one of the big hitters is going to be gone come Saturday evening.
Yeah, definitely. When the draw was made, there was 2 teams probably looking to avoid each other. Everybody else was probably looking to avoid Shane O'Neill's and St. Peter's. So all the other teams are probably happy enough to see them matched up. But no doubt, a tough draw. Shane O'Neill's obviously, probably, again, room for improvement, while the scoreline, was quite maybe, a convincing one in the end. It wasn't as convincing as it seemed on the day. And St. Peter's really struggled over on Offmore. I've seen St. Peter's twice this year. I thought they drew with St. Paul's, and Niall McConville really pulled them out of jail that night. And against Donoughmore, Niall McConville and Niall Craney really, sort of pulled them out of the fire there. That was a game that went down to the wire. But St. Peter's have a lot of experience at this level. They're champions only in 2018, you know what I mean? And they're a couple of years up at senior, and played, quite well up there for a few years. So St. Peter's has to be one of the favourites in the competition. Definitely, I think Shane Reels will probably put Greg McCabe and Niall McConville. It'll be a great matchup to see. Look, Niall's probably on form, probably one of the best forwards in Armagh this year. There's no doubt about that. And I think that'll be a great tussle. Around the middle, look, Shane Reels, we know, play a very, very exciting, fast running brand of football. They have some really quality players we've seen before. Paul O'Rourke in the forward line. A new lad, Rory O'Brien, that I hadn't seen before. Really impressed with him coming on to score 2-2 last week. And obviously the Mackin brothers as well in the forward line. So Shane's have plenty of options. I'd say probably Cullaville, who we'll discuss later. It's probably one of the the highest scoring potential teams in the league. They seem to score a high number of goals all the time. And I think that around the middle, while St. Peter's have strong, Aaron Fenton in there's midfield, the Shane Reels, Kieran Mackin, the pace Shane Reels have around the middle is going to be difficult to handle. And on a big pitch like the Athletic Grounds, I think it may be to Shane Reels' advantage.
And just thinking back to that St. Peter's Donoughmore game, Rory, Donoughmore played with Oisín McKeever inside, and obviously they got the goal from a big high ball into the square. They had a target man in there and they used them to great effect. They kicked everything in, tested that full back line, really, really tested them. And so much so that Aaron Findon actually had to come back and play nearly in a sweeper role in that full back line. So Shane O'Neill's probably don't have a player in that mode. Like we talked about O'Rourke and O'Brien, but they're small, slight, quick forwards. They're not big, strong players like Oisín McKeever. So I'm not sure if Shane O'Neill's will go that route and go route one football to test St. Peter's the same way Donoughmore did.
Yeah, and in fairness, to be honest with you, St. Peter's aren't really a route one team either. I think this is going to be, two teams that like to run the ball. Amit Hahian, and Robbie Brady and the half-back line for St. Peter's are good ball players. They like to run the ball through the hands. St. Peter's have, good ball players all over the pitch. So I think it's going to be, this is the potential to be a good game. They're not two teams that really like to sit back. They typically don't play a lot of numbers behind the ball. I think this will be high scoring, possibly a shootout. I just fancy Shane O'Neill's have been really strong this year, making the overlaps. And probably themselves and Cullaville have been the two form teams really in Division 2 this year. And, for me, Shane O'Neill's are probably my favourites for the championship. And I just feel that they're going to have enough if they can really get a handle on Niall McConville. If they can, if Greg can edge that battle, I think Shane O'Neill should have enough to get over the line. But look, Niall McConville's really, as I said, one of the foreign players I think in Armagh this year. I was at the St. Paul's, St. Peter's game where Niall really pulled that game out of the fire for St. Peter's. They were 4 down, 5 down, with 7 missed goal. Niall scored 4 points. One of them, from outside the 50 under huge pressure. So, he can play inside, he can run at them from deep. So look, they're really going to need to get a grasp on him. But if they can get him grasped, and I said not to discount Niall Craney and a couple of the other St. Peter's players who are good players, but Niall's really their talisman. And I think that if Shane Reels can win that battle, it'll go a long way till getting them through to the semi-finals.
And just on matchups, really, like that Greg McCabe, Niall McConville, hopefully that comes off, because I would love to see that, and it'll be such an important matchup. And another one's going to be in around the middle of the field. And I suppose it's worth saying that Conor Mackin didn't play against Whitecross in the first round, so I'm not sure if he'll be back, if he's injured, or what the story is. But I mentioned Aaron Findon dropping back because of the long ball in against Donoughmore. If St. Peter's don't play like that, Findon's most likely to play midfield, and he's probably going to pick up Kieran Mackin. So that's another huge tussle that could decide the game.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup. They're probably two slightly different styles of midfielders. Kieran's definitely, has played a very attacking role and covers a lot of ground, whereas Aaron has been more, the holding midfielder, playing, the role that Ben Creedy really played for Armagh this year, that holding role. And Aaron has done that for Armagh and done that for St. Peter's, for a long time. So it'll be a clash of styles, and it'll be interesting to see if that matchup comes off. And then Conor Mackin, if he comes back in for Shane O'Neill's, I'm not sure what the injury is. It'll be interesting to see where he plays. I've seen him play at full forward, and when we played them in 2017, he was full forward in the championship, and he was very, very effective. I've seen him play at midfield for Armagh, and he can play there. He's an excellent leap as well, so it'll be interesting, in terms of how St. Peter's are preparing this game, where Conor Mackin's going to play and who they're end up to match up with him.
I think I'm just going to mix up our predictions a wee bit. I'm going to go for a draw with this one. And probably I think it's going to be extra time, and I don't think it's penalties. I think it'll go for a replay, but I'm going for a draw, Rory, on our first one of a double header in the Athletic Ground Saturday. It's Bleak and Tullysorn up next, and obviously we were both at the Bleak game on Saturday, Rory. We were on Armagh TV duty, so we were at it. We were streaming it live. I'm sure John Devine and Davy Hart were also at it. And what do you think they saw? Did they see any weaknesses? I think probably from our perspective, we were impressed with Blake's defensive system. The fact that, they conceded 3 goals the last day out. I think they conceded maybe 10 in their last 5 games in the league or something. So they were going to shut up shop. They weren't going to concede goals. And they ultimately hit that target and got 2 themselves. And that's what put them through to the quarterfinal.
Yeah, well, I suppose first, me and you were both at the game, and I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a really competitive game and played at the right championship spirit, and it was a massive win for Blake's. I believe it was their first in intermediate, according to reports. So a huge result for them, and look, a culmination of a lot of hard work. They'd been knocking on the door in 2019. We played them and just pipped them in the league in 2019. And then they went on to lose a championship final, as well. And then, to win junior and then to come up and to win a championship in intermediate shows. Look, Gareth Thornton and the team there, and Frank Dawson in the background, they've put in a huge amount of work, and they've brought Blake's really, they've really took this panel of players forward. And I think that momentum really is going to stand the Blake's. They're well organised. As they have a system of play that suits them. They play this bank of 4 across the sort of, just outside the 45 and 3 and behind that, when they concede possession, it makes them very difficult to break down. Really, the Forkhill game was an outlier. The first day, they haven't been conceding big scores all year. They've been very difficult to break down, and they've been hitting teams on the break. Now, they haven't been scoring huge scores themselves either, but they've been just had enough to hit Drew McVeigh and Sean McCreesh and Mark McParland on the break, and that system of play has stood them well all year. In saying that, look, Tullysorn's going to be a really different challenge for them. We both know Tullysorn's quality up front. You were at the game last week, and I believe Eddie Mallon and Gavin Conlon really took out. So this forward line of Tullysorn's going to provide a different challenge for Blake's, but I do think that it's something that Blake's would be excited for, and the momentum really gives them a massive chance, I think, this week.
Now, probably when we come to talk about the intermediate and you talk about these top teams, it's always the forward lines you're talking about, because they're the players that catch the eye. But I suppose with Blake last week, the first game against Forkhill, even, you had to mark Cormac Toner. He was the standout player because Jamar Hall wasn't there. Then last week, Jamar Hall was there, but Cormac Toner wasn't there. So they put all their attentions on the best forward that Forkhill had. This week, they're going to have to mark Eddie Mallon. You're going to have to mark Gavin Conlon. You're going to have to mark Mark McKeever. It's a different prospect, trying to tie down 3 key players instead of just 1.
Yeah. And look, my old friend Kieran Mullen would be disappointed if I didn't mention him. Kieran's a quality player there, and Owen Daly at midfield, and Tullysorn have a lot of pacey players, a lot of smart footballers. Kieran O'Riordan playing, as well around there, has been with Tullysorn for a long time. Smart footballer, So look, Tullysorn's experienced at this level. They've been kind of knocking at the door, beaten 2 semi-finals in the last 2 years. So Tullysorn experienced at this level. I think this year they've kind of come in under the radar. This is the first year since they've been in 2A that they haven't really been in the promotion shake-up in the last couple of games. The sort of, really Shane O'Neill's and St. Peter's and St. Paul's were really the 3 teams vying out at the top, and Tullysorn just sort of fell slightly off that. So they've come in maybe slightly under the radar. I know they've lost Brian Kelly, great centre halfback, one of the best, I think, in intermediate and possibly further field. Great footballer, Brian. So he's definitely a loss to them and experience at 6. But as you say, the forward line can cause anybody bother, and any two forwards that can score not 17 in a championship game, especially against as I said, an impressive Crossmaglen defence. That Crossmaglen team hasn't conceded big scores all year, have acquitted themselves really well in intermediate B, and probably exceeded all expectations, finishing third, in intermediate B, doing really well. So I think Tullyshawn were obviously very impressive, in that win. But for me, I think there's possibly potential for an upset here. I think that Baleeks have momentum. They had a tough run in the league, where they hadn't won their last 3 games. They drew with ourselves. They had been beaten by Cullaville and then beaten by Tiernogue. So to turn that round and to beat Forkhill after a replay, I think is a massive psychological boost for these players. They'll be upbeat and buoyant in training this week. And look, I think Baleeks have nothing to lose. They'll be really looking forward to this game. And, I do think that for me, this is one of the tightest games to call. Maybe not on paper, looking at league results or where the two teams are, but I think just in terms of championship momentum, and I've been impressed with Baleeks, and I enjoyed watching them. And some of their best players are really in good form. I think Sean Priest is playing really well, and we've seen him this last 2 weeks put 9 and 8 points together. Mark McParland, again, another player in good form, scoring goals every week, and he gives them that outlet at full forward. So look, I think Baleeks really have a chance here.
I think I'll just go Tullysarn. I was so impressed with Eddie Mullen and Gavin Conlon, and as I keep saying, 17 points between 2 players will win a lot of games, would win 2 games sometimes. So I think I'm just going to edge Tullysarn, but it's definitely going to be a good game to watch, you'd imagine, and it's going to be tight and a tough to call, but I'll just give Tullysarn the nod. And then
it's going to be a clash of styles.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting to see how Tullysarn set up to match, this Baleeks system, and we've seen it. Sometimes they're happier to concede the kick out, drop a few men back. Now, Callum O'Neill's availability, obviously, we're not sure where that is. He didn't tog last week. He had his arm in a sling that we've seen.
He's gone for the year, for as far as I know.
Right, well, that's disappointing now, because it just means that, it's sometimes safer for them to concede the kick out, because if the press full and Callum's not there, they don't have that big man to sometimes contest. Although, look, Tullysarn's not the biggest team in the league either, so it'll be a different tactical challenge for both teams. I think that the way the Tullysarn forward line is, I don't think Baleeks can go man to man. Tullysarn have a lot of really good individual forwards, and the way they've been playing, as I said, maybe Sean Finnegan will probably pick up either Eddie Mullen.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who they'll put in Gavin Conlon. But they'll probably just drop 2 numbers sort of back in front of that full back line, and the other 3 sort of filter across to lose the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how Tullysarn break down that system.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be one to look out for on Saturday evening. That's at 6:00. Then the final game, really final game of the weekend, it's Cullaville taking on College Lawn in Abbey Park at 2:00 on Sunday. Cullaville, they're going to be favourites heading into this game, and it's interesting to note, like, coming into all the games last year, Cullaville, they were taking on Shane O'Neill, St. Paul's, and Sarsfields and Carcruppen. They probably were only favourites in the final, and they lost it. They were obviously favourites against Katie, and they beat them, but how heavy does that favourites tag weigh on a team like Cullaville? They were in 2B this year, but a lot of people tipping them for the championship and really saying that they can go all the way here.
Well, having played against them twice and not performed particularly well, in fact, Clonmore didn't get anywhere near close to Cullaville twice this year. I think they carried the favourites tag pretty well in the league all year. As I said, in what I have seen, Cullaville's been the most impressive team I've seen all year. Their forward line, their work rate around the middle, their midfield press, around the midfield has been very, very, very impressive, and they really don't give teams time on the ball anywhere all over the pitch. and a lot of this I seen them playing without Niall Rowland, so having Niall Rowland back, I've seen Niall play in the last 2 games, but having Niall Rowland back, for them only adds to that and improves the quality of the ball that they're able to feed in, And when you talked about quality forward lines and about Tully Shorn and thing, in my opinion, I think Cullivil's probably, on paper the best forward line, and they haven't really. The only thing I would say is I don't think they've had their best 6 forwards on the pitch yet this year, just through little injuries here or there. I haven't seen what I would consider, Collie Waters, Jarvey, Hatzer, Dara Quinn, McCreesh, and is it Fergal Kieran? Fergal Kieran. Yeah. I haven't really seen those 6 together, and I've seen them all play at various points, and I've been really impressed with them all. Their work rate, their tackling, but it'll be interesting to see what sort of damage they can do with those 6 on the pitch. But look, I was also at the Collegeland Cullivill League game. Collegeland have really, I feel, turned the corner later in the season. Collegeland picked up a lot of good points late in the league. I was at the Collegeland Cullivill League game in Collegeland, and Cullivill maybe ended up winning by 7 or 8 points, but up until 50 minutes, the game was level. It was really, really tight. A goalkeeping mistake by Niall Brady, who had been excellent the whole game, and really, really, he is key to Collegeland, turned the game. So Collegeland suits going man-to-man. I think, in my opinion, the only way to play Cullivill is to go man-to-man. If you drop off Cullivill and give him time, the Fergal Rowland there and Niall and other quality players coming forward to pick out those passes into the good forwards, and they have an excellent kicking game. If you give them time to give those passes, I think you're in a hiding to nowhere. So, but that suits the way Collegeland play. Collegeland have moved Tyrone McGeary into the half-back line, Tom Murphy and Stephen McKenna, and really, really impressive half-back line. In my opinion, one of the best in the league. Tom Murphy's and great players. And then across the half-forward line, they have great height as well. So they've Shane Donnelly there at wing half-forward and Oliver Murphy at the other wing half, and the 2 McGeary brothers in the middle. So they're really, really strong with their own kickouts. They play well going man-to-man, and they can score. Collegeland they can score from distance. James Kelly, unfortunately, has left. He's went to Australia, as far as I'm aware, so he will be a miss for them. He had been previously playing maybe centre half back, but they've moved sort of Tom into that role. He'd been playing maybe sometimes in the full forward line for them, and he was a good target man. So James will be a miss, but Jason Kelly still in there. Brian McGeary, I think I may be kind to him and saying 44, but I marked him in our recent league game where we drew him, and he's still a very, very difficult customer to mark and one of the smartest full forwards in the league. So I wouldn't write Collegeland completely off here. I think they've been playing well. They played very well against Ballyhagan up until a point. I think a few late goals brought Ballyhagan, maybe softened the scoreline, but Collegeland dominated that game early on, and I think Collegeland have been in decent form come the later half of the year.
And the fact that Collegeland have been relegated, Rory, where does that come into, or does that go out the window once the championship starts? It's a new campaign. You've all to play for, nothing to lose really in the championship once you've already been relegated.
Yeah, I think so. And in our case anyway, I know that there was definitely pride at stake to sort of say that, look, we haven't relegated, but look, we feel that we still have quality to belong at this level, and that was the sort of mantra that Clonmore took. We came out to try and put a bit of pride back in our jerseys and to show that we can compete at this level. And Collegeland will probably want to do the same. And as I said, they played Cullivill twice this year, whilst they've been beat. I don't think they'll have anything to fear. I think they have, the armoury to cause Cullivill damage. But look, if Cullivill got those 6 forwards on the pitch playing well, it'll be very hard to back against them. And as I said, if Shane Reels is favourites for the championship, I think Cullivill is probably a close second.
Yeah, I think Cullivill, I'm going to give them the nod here as well. I think they should be getting over the line here, and I really think they can give this championship a real rattle over the next couple of weeks. Rory, brilliant to hear your thoughts, and thanks for coming on talking about the quarterfinals of the Intermediate Championship. All them games at the minute, if everything goes to plan, are all live on Armagh TV this weekend. Of course, we'll be bringing you all the action with previews, match reports, our podcast, our review show coming up next weekend. And make sure that you keep voting for your player of the week as well on our website. Rory, great to hear your thoughts and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Sean. Pleasure to be here as always.